Good afternoon, everyone joining us. This is Pilar with Fox News Now. You were looking at live aerial footage of a car into a chicken restaurant in Davie, Florida. We don't have a whole lot of information at this time. Looks like it's a Pollo Tropical restaurant, and you can see the red vehicle there on the bottom left of the screen. This footage being provided from WSVN in Davie, Florida. All right, so we have two separate situations here. We are showing on the left side of your screen a car into a Florida restaurant while we await a Roy Moore campaign statement. So we are here with you. Feel free to let us know where you are watching from today and possibly what you're expecting to hear from this Roy Moore campaign statement.
Lincoln and not. Where's Scooter? Yeah, what's the Scooter?
How he started his day.
I would ask for permission to watch the TV.
I think she likes it though. She likes it about it. She was
How many years
she
has
was
she
like,
been? She may not.
well, maybe I need to just get a quick piece of it.
And then we'll all be.
We should set a forgery. She was headed this.
Senate from Alabama had sexually assaulted her when she was 16 years old. She shared with the press her high school yearbook, which she has with her today, and which we will show you once again. She said that Roy Moore had asked her if he could sign it after she laid it on the counter close to where he was sitting at the Old Hickory restaurant in Alabama. She stated that she was working as a waitress there when she was 16 years old. She added that she had heard that Mr. Moore was a district attorney of Etowah County, Alabama, and that she was thrilled that such an important person would ask to sign her yearbook. After the press conference, the Moore campaign or some of his supporters circulated a number of false statements about Beverly. One false statement was that the restaurant never existed. That assertion was proven false by public records in the library. Another misleading statement made by Roy Moore was contained in a letter to Sean Hannity in which he alleged that Beverly appeared before him in her divorce. Court records in Beverly's Alabama divorce attorney, Mr. Ward, indicated that she never appeared before Roy Moore because no hearing was held in her case and the case was dismissed because the parties reconciled. I have an affidavit from Mr. Ward in support of that fact. Further, some of Mr. Moore's supporters suggested that Mr. Moore never wrote anything in Beverly's yearbook and that he did not sign it. Some supporters even suggested that the signature in Beverly's yearbook was a forgery. In order to put this falsehood to rest, we retained a handwriting and document expert to examine what appears to be Mr. Moore's signature and the inscription above it. Our expert is Arthur T. Anthony. Mr. Anthony is a certified forensic handwriting and document examiner. He has worked for the FBI, the Illinois Department of Law Enforcement in the State Crime Laboratory, and from 1981 to 2009, he worked for the Georgia Bureau of Investigation, State Crime Laboratory, where he was chief forensic document examiner and manager of questioned documents and the forensic imaging section. He is qualified to testify as an expert in federal and state court, and he has testified in many hearings, including in Alabama. Mr. Anthony reviewed a number of documents containing the known standard genuine signature and/or handwriting of Roy Moore for comparison purposes. He then compared Roy Moore's known standard handwriting and signature to the entry in Beverly's yearbook. That's Exhibit 1, which we will show you, that stated, quote, "To a sweeter, more beautiful girl, I could not say Merry Christmas," end quote. 1977, love, Roy Moore, end quote. He also analyzed Exhibit 2 from another accuser of Roy Moore, which stated, quote, "Happy graduation, Debbie. I wanted to give you this card myself. I know you will be a success in anything you do. Roy," end quote. The expert concluded that the signature and the handwritten notation above the signature on Exhibits 1 and 2 were prepared by Roy Moore. We are very happy to be able to announce this important expert opinion regarding Beverly's yearbook. We think it's important evidence that supports Beverly's statements that Roy Moore asked to sign her yearbook when she was just 16 years old. And it demonstrates that when Roy Moore stated, quote, "I do not know any of these women," end quote, that statement does not appear to be true. Because according to forensic handwriting and document examiner Arthur T. Anthony, the signature and the handwritten notation above the signature were prepared by Roy Moore. We did not ask the expert to examine the printing after the cursive writing and signature because Beverly indicates that she added that to remind herself of who Roy Moore was and where and when Mr. Moore signed her yearbook. The expert's opinion is important evidence, which we hope that the voters of Alabama will take into consideration when they vote next Tuesday. It's time to stop the misleading statements about Beverly, who had the courage to tell what she says is the truth about her experience with Roy Moore. Voters have a right to be represented by someone who tells them the truth, rather than someone who denies and threatens to sue his accusers who allege that they were his victims when they were teenagers. We look forward to learning if Alabama voters will believe Roy Moore's accusers or if they will ignore the evidence presented to them and instead elect a man who denies the allegations against him and who attacks those who dare to tell what they say is the truth about Roy Moore. And now I present Beverly Young Nelson.
Since I spoke about my experience with Roy Moore when I was only 16 years old, I have been the target of threats and lies. A talk radio host said that I should be put in the town square and stoned, and he said he wanted to be the first to throw the largest stone at me. Someone even sent me a photo of a casket, which I took as a threat. As a result, I have had to live behind triple locked doors, tinted windows. I've had to even have security accompany me when I went to a doctor's appointment. Also, I am a businesswoman, and I have always had an excellent reputation. But now, some supporters of Roy Moore seem bent on trying to destroy that. This reminds me of when Roy Moore told me that no one would believe me because I was a child, and he was the district attorney of Etowah County, Alabama. I've lived in fear of sharing what he did to me until other women came forward. I still have some fear, but I refuse to be intimidated into silence or retract anything that I have said. I want everyone to know that I stand by my previous statement that Roy Moore sexually assaulted me. I'm very happy that the very prominent and widely respected expert Arthur T. Anthony has written a report concluding that Roy Moore did sign my yearbook. This is important information for the voters to consider. Finally, as I stated at our press conference, I am a Republican who supported Mr. Trump for president. I did so because I thought that he cared about people like me. I am very disappointed that I was wrong. President Trump has chosen to support a powerful politician like Mr. Moore over women like me who accuse Roy Moore of preying on them when they were in their teens. I guess we as women don't matter because we are not part of the old boys club. It seems that it is just business as usual in the White House. The swamp is getting deeper and has not been drained. I want to thank everyone in Alabama and all over the United States who have sent me words of support and encouragement and have lifted my spirits. Even though it is very difficult to speak the truth to power, I promise that I will see this through, and I refuse to give up.
Thank you. I'm going to take your yearbook out.
Mm-hmm.
I'll just show you a couple things, and then we're happy to answer questions. Okay, can you open it to the signature?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, let's hold up for a minute. So, we provided you with a copy of Mr. Anthony's report and how he went about coming to his conclusion. And so it's all there for you to see. And we have attached for you a number of exhibits. Exhibit 1 is a signature in the yearbook, and we have the yearbook right there. So there's Roy Moore's signature at the bottom.
If you're just joining
Again,
us, we
the
are
expert
waiting for a
says that
press
the
conference
inscription
to
at the
start
top
with the Roy
through
Moore
his signature,
campaign,
that was Roy
following
Moore.
an earlier press
And
conference
exhibit
today where
2
the
is
accuser
The one
admitted
that you saw in the
to
Washington
forging
Post just in the last
the
few weeks.
yearbook inscription.
That
So on the right is the
young
press
woman
conference, on the
named Debbie
left
found
is
in her
the
memory
earlier
book.
press conference with the
And so that is
accuser
also signed Roy.
and Gloria Allred.
And she alleges that was Roy Moore's signature, and that was Exhibit 2 that the document examiner also used to reach his conclusion, and examined and used. Okay, now Exhibit 3 is a signature of Roy Moore, and this was when he filed an appeal. And this was in June 1981. It's dated at the bottom, and he signed that. This is, I believe, when he was a deputy district attorney for Etowah County. So that was public record, and we were able to obtain that from the public record. That's his signature there. And Exhibit 4, again, is a notice of appeal that is signed by Roy Moore. And this was also June 19th, 1981, bears his signature, and that was also used by the examiner from the public record, as these are exemplars. Exhibit 5 is a copy of his Roy Moore's marriage license, and so that's also part of the record which was used. And Exhibit 6 is, this was a book that Roy Moore had, So Help Me God, and we were able to obtain the book from the person who purchased it, and Roy Moore, according to the person who purchased it, signed it below to Victor Roy Moore with the date, and that was in September 24th, 05. And so that is also an exemplar for his signature. Exhibit 7 is the very extensive resume of Mr. Anthony, who is located in Grayson, Georgia. And it's extremely impressive, I think, by anybody's standards for experts. And as I said, he has been admitted to testify as an expert, in other words, qualified as an expert in courts of law, federal and state, and in other hearings. So that is it, and we're happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Can we get a clean shot
Of the,
of the signature after the signature?
oh yeah, sure, of the yearbook, right, absolutely, that's. By the way, it's interesting because Roy Moore's wife's photo is in this yearbook as well. Mm-hmm. And I noticed in Wikipedia that apparently he met her when she was a teenager. Mm-hmm. And if you would like to see her photo later on, we're happy to show you that in the yearbook. And Beverly's photo's there too.
Mm-hmm. It's all right.
Oh, do you still have the memory book too? Do you happen to have it with you? Oh, one other interesting thing, too, is, you know, that memory book that was presented by Debbie, one of the accusers who came forward, the Washington Post article, and you'll see a copy of what that, in what we just handed out to you. Beverly found the same copy, a memory book that she had from those days as well. I guess this was popular.
It was something that we all did that year.
Is got
and it's frayed. You can tell it's old.
Yeah. Okay. So, any other questions?
Can you tell me where you stand since the last news conference that you had, where, or let me rephrase that, where the last news conference that mentioned this with the Roy Moore campaign? Can you tell me where you stand about giving up that yearbook to their handwriting forensic experts?
You mean to Moore's handwriting expert?
Yeah, in other words,
yeah.
Ago that they wanted to be able to perform their own.
Okay. Well, we stand exactly where we stood when we had that press conference, which is we asked, and I have the copies of the letters, that I sent a letter to the United States Senate Select Committee on Ethics, and also to the United States Senate Judiciary Committee, to the chairs and ranking members, asking them to immediately conduct a hearing, even prior to the election, so that Beverly could come and testify under oath to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help her God, and that they should subpoena Roy Moore to testify under oath, tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth, so help him God, about his denials, and that we would then turn over the yearbook to the committee for an independent examination. That didn't happen. They didn't accept our call to convene such a hearing. They could have. I spoke to a former United States Senator and a Democrat, and I spoke to a former high-ranking Republican member of Congress. He was formerly chair of the Rules Committee, David Dreyer, who gave me permission to use his name, who said, yes, of course, they could have convened such a hearing even prior to the election if they wanted to, because it's not the law, it's politics, and they could convene it the next day. I mean, David Dreyer said if somebody said they got a hangnail because of NAFTA, they could have convened a hearing the next day if they wanted to. They can do whatever they want. Obviously, they didn't want to have such a hearing prior to the election. If, as and when he should be elected, then they're going to have to convene an ethics hearing, at which time Beverly will look forward to testifying. Hopefully they will then subpoena Roy Moore, who has not yet indicated if he will testify under oath at such a hearing. And hopefully they will invite all of the other accusers as well to share their stories about what they allege Mr. Moore did to them. And then, based on their findings, and they are welcome to examine the yearbook, then they should take appropriate action given whatever their findings are. But we're hoping they will vigorously cross-examine Roy Moore. And of course, Beverly welcomes any and all questions. I can't speak for the other accusers, I don't represent them. So, why won't you turn over the yearbook? We have said consistently from the first, we're happy to do that to the Senate hearing such a matter. They chose not to, all right? Now we have our own expert, highly respected, and we have more that we're not disclosing. But for now, we have this expert, and I think his opinion needs to be looked at extremely seriously, because we've shared with you how he reached that decision and what his conclusions are and on what he based it. So we're very transparent. Any other questions?
How important is President Trump's stance on this matter? How important do you think his stance is in swaying public opinion about Roy Moore? And do you think
I guess we won't know the answer to that question of how important President Trump's decision to back Roy Moore is until we see what the voters of Alabama decide, how much they want to take that into account or not take into account. I don't know. But I did hear that someone from the Republican National Committee saying that they've decided to put significant funding from the Republican National Committee into Roy Moore's campaign, because the president is now supporting Roy Moore. So I think it's important, especially because the money now, significant amount, is flowing into his campaign from the Republican National Committee. But it has been said many times, this is, as has been said many times, it's really going to be up to the voters of Alabama, but hopefully they will consider this expert opinion as well. Any other question? Oh, I do hear you.
Oh, good. Thank you. I wanted to get your direct reaction and perhaps Ms. Nelson's reaction. The MORE campaign, since your interview this morning, has really seized upon the additions that were made, where you mentioned that she added the location and the date to remind herself who Roy Moore was. They are saying that that is proof this was a forgery. I wanted to get your direct response to that, as well as Ms. Nelson's reaction to the RNC recommitting funds to the MORE campaign. So first, a question about the date and the location, and then secondly, direct reaction to the RNC.
Okay, well, that's what we call a red herring, and it's also a defamatory statement to accuse her of a crime. So I would say that anyone who accuses her of a crime, or me, should proceed at their own risk and at their own peril. And I would say such risk and such peril is significant under the circumstances. And I think, and we've addressed that. Okay. So I think the key is not to be distracted from the fact that the expert attests to his conclusion that it was Roy Moore's signature in her yearbook, and that the inscription that he wrote to her, and the inscription which appears before his signature, is that of Roy Moore. Now, why is that relevant? That's relevant because at one point Mr. Moore indicated that he did not know these women, and it's also relevant because supporters of his campaign have been saying that's not his signature, he didn't write that. So, again, they would like to distract. We're not going to be distracted. That's Roy Moore's signature, according to the expert. And he wrote the inscription according to this respected expert. And that's what's important. Many people who collect autographs will tell you that they will often write at the, and I've been told this, right after the celebrity or well-known person who has signed their yearbook or their other book or some other document.
Reggie, who is with us today, attorney that represents the campaign, made some comments about this accusation from Gloria Allred's client, Beverly Nelson, and today Philip has some additional comments to make for you. Philip.
Thank you, sir. And we do appreciate you being here today to help get the truth out. 3 weeks ago, when we had a press statement, you may remember, we talked about some things, and one of the things that I said then was that, you know, anytime you have accusations, you have someone that's making the accusations. And there are times when it's true. And when it's true, it's absolutely horrible for the person who's making the accusations, both because of what they went through, but also because of having to come forward and make statements publicly. But there are also times when it is not true. And when it's not true, then it's equally horrible for the person that it's said about. And I remember the day that the accusations were made, I didn't get to see Judge Moore in person, but I saw him on TV. He came out of church, he was with his wife, and he was with his mom. And I'll never forget the look on his mom's face when they walked out. So this has been horrible. It's been absolutely horrible for Judge Moore, his wife, his mom, his daughter, his sons, his granddaughters, his friends, his church members, people across the state of Alabama that have known him for so long. And again, I've known him for 24 years. Been in over 100 meetings with him. I've been around over 10,000 women in his presence, and not once have I ever seen him act remotely inappropriate. Not one time. And that's the man that I know. And we hoped back then that when you have allegations that are 40 years old, that somehow something can come out to prove that it's not true. Well, guess what? It has. In this case, it has. Back on November 13th, you remember Gloria Allred and her client, Beverly Young Nelson, held a press conference. What they said then was either a lie what they said today, or what they said today was a lie. And the voters are going to have to decide, were they lying then, or are they lying now, or do the voters think they've been telling the truth all along? But here's what they said. Beverly Nelson says, he, referring to Judge Moore, she says, he wrote in my yearbook. He wrote in my yearbook. And then she wrote it out. She gave the full quote, and she said that it was signed by Roy Moore, Old Hickory House, Roy Moore, D.A. Gloria Allred then repeated it, and we're going to give these notes out to you, and I want you, members of the media, please verify it yourselves. Look at the press conference video. We'll give you the marks where they started, what they said, where they completed. Please look at it yourselves, because Gloria Allred repeated that statement that everything written in the yearbook was written by Judge Moore. Gloria Allred came back again at the end when asked a question, with her client, Beverly Nelson, nodding in agreement that everything written on that page was written by Judge Moore. Well, today, it's a different story, isn't it? They're not saying that anymore. They're saying that parts of it were not written by Judge Moore. We suspected it back then, and we demanded that they turn over the yearbook so that we could test the ink, test the writing, and test everything. We renew that demand today, release the yearbook, so that an independent expert, not your paid expert, an independent expert, a neutral third-party custodian, can take it and look at the ink so that we can find out, is the ink a month old or is it 40 years old? The truth is out there, and until she releases the yearbook, all we know is they're not telling the truth and they've lied. And under the Alabama pattern jury instructions, it tells a jury, if you believe that a witness has lied in anything, you can disregard everything they've said. So again, Gloria Allred, release the yearbook. It's been 23 days. Release the yearbook. Thank you.
Thank you, Philip. In addition to that, you all know that we've had accusations coming to us that's been fed through, unfortunately, some Republicans in Washington. Mitch McConnell started this attack on Judge Moore back during the primary and during the runoff, and it's continued. We have felt all along that he's been involved in this, and the Republican establishment's been involved in this, and now today it's been verified by a news report that some Republican operatives that have been associated with Mitt Romney and with Jeb Bush have been involved in feeding information regarding some of these accusations so that it can be put into the media to the Washington Post. So we're going to be passing out. Hannah, have you got those reports that we can pass out? We're going to pass out to you this report that came out today. It's been out in 2 or 3 different media outlets today. We have one that we've printed real quickly to give to you so that you can see exactly what has been accused and what has been revealed, I should say, through these reports. So we know, again, that this is not just Democrats that want to keep Judge Moore out, but unfortunately, some leadership in Washington don't want the truth to be shown of what's going on up there. You know, we talk a lot about what are they trying to hide. Well, I guess it doesn't take a very brilliant person to think that they want to have 60 votes before they can bring something up for a 50 vote plus one passage. And so one of the things that they're not wanting Roy Moore up there for, I guess, is so that he won't continue to demand that bills be brought up without a 60-vote rule. He's long been for that removal, and once that's removed, we'll be able to get bills up and pass with a 50+1. So, again, the establishment doesn't want this to happen. They want it to be same old, business as usual. But Roy Moore is not going to Washington to do business as usual. He's going up there to shake things up. And I think next Tuesday, on December the 12th, the voters of Alabama will give him that opportunity to go to Washington and be the next United States Senator from Alabama. Thank you very much.
Before you begin, is Judge Moore willing to testify? You said it's a press conference.
Is he willing to testify under oath?
Hey, you said it's a press conference. We've got some questions.
Okay, everybody, there you have it. No comments afterwards. They didn't want to take any questions from the Roy Moore campaign. But they did call for Gloria Allred and her client, Beverly Nelson, to release the yearbook. They said there's way too many inconsistencies in the story, and they want the physical evidence. So we are going to take you to the latest on the Lilac fire in San Diego County.
In addition to the Lilac fire, when it broke out, we had a new fire in Riverside County, the Liberty fire. And fortunately, this morning it's 300 acres and 59% contained. So we made good progress on several of these while we've had an opportunity where we've had the winds subsiding. And then the Skirball fire in Los Angeles County near Brentwood, 475 acres and 30% contained. So our focus continues to be on these fires that are posing the greatest threats to life and property. We have over 8,700 firefighters on the fire lines as we speak this morning. Over 141,000 acres have burned in this fire siege since Monday. Ultimately, over 212,000 residents have been evacuated at some point. So we, as Director Ghilarducci indicated, continue to move resources and anticipate additional wind events coming through the weekend. We will continue to monitor that and move resources and work very closely with all of our cooperating agencies and partners across the state. So with that, I believe, come on up.
Well, actually, I would have preferred FEMA go first. Get up here. All right, sir. Now, the nature of California fires really does resemble other great disasters that are predictable but not predictable with specificity, whether it's the hurricanes that FEMA has been so involved in, natural flooding. Our fires happen. They happen at a time of the choosing that isn't 365 days spread out, but in fact all at once. And so the reason that it's important for the President's declaration and for FEMA's involvement is that we are stretching thin resources because they are being moved from city to city. But as you can see from the last briefing, it's very clear that California has put its resources out there, and now it's time for the federal government to backfill those to make sure that a next fire that breaks out isn't one without response. And so, I think our role is to deal with the size and scope cumulatively of all these fires. Obviously, there are tax considerations and direct grants that will be part of these declarations. My job, in a sense, is just to watch and make sure that the people that do this for a living and are trained every day are here to help. And with that, I'd like to cut short my speech and get the next briefing in. Thanks, Bob.
Well, let me finish things up. So as Mark said, we declared a fire management assistance grant, and we've declared 5 of them so far in the Southern California fires. It frees up resources, provides financial support to the costs being expended on these fires from the first responders, fire, police, medical. In addition to that, as said, the President very quickly approved this morning the request by the governor for additional federal resources. So we're coordinating those right now as we go through these windstorms. If any federal resources are needed for this event, we will go ahead and provide them. In some cases, we're trying to pre-position stuff now and have done that through the week to make sure they're ready to respond quickly upon those requests. In addition to that, we will be working with the state and the local governments to do assessments to look at further programs that are available through the federal government to help with recovery long term, whether those be programs in FEMA or programs in other federal agencies such as SBA or others. So we're working hand in hand to do those assessments over time. Thank you.
Can you talk specifically about what FEMA will do to help people who lost their homes?
Well, right now, people who have lost their homes should be going to their insurance companies and making claims for those. At this point, there has not been a major disaster declared for FEMA. We have to do those assessments first to determine what programs may be needed for the federal government, but there's a lot of programs that exist at the county level and state level that may be applicable right now to include assistance that Red Cross or other voluntary agencies may be able to provide. Right now our focus has been to focus on the fire and getting the fire out and providing federal resources to help state and local resources in putting the fire out, whether those be from federal wildfire agencies such as U.S. Forest Service, BIA, Department of Interior, or Department of Defense, which has a number of resources in here. So that's our focus right now is to put the fires out, and then later we'll do assessments to determine whether programs may be available to individuals that are impacted from the storm. But I'd start with going to your insurance company and start to get assistance there.
And that's an active discussion on very much a bipartisan basis by the California delegation, is to try to make sure that in these cases fire is dealt, if you will, on a parity level with flood, because there can be a difference. We're trying to minimize that difference for uninsured losses related to fire coming right off of major flood damage, which is still creating $79 or so billion of additional money.
Thank you. We're going to break it up real quick. Our principals will be available for about 10 minutes. Some of them have to get out of here, so if you have individuals, please grab them now. Thank you.
Good to see you, sir.
You know, I
Come grab your mic.
Yeah, I think that.
All right, everyone, we are waiting for President Trump to board Air Force One to head to Pensacola, Florida for his Make America Great Again rally. thanks again so much, everyone, for being with Fox News Now this afternoon. We are currently awaiting President Trump's departure to Pensacola, Florida, where he is going to do a Make America Great Again rally. If you're watching us on YouTube, feel free to hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. That way you can always be alerted when we go live.
That's amazing.
To let you guys know, we do have a good feed here, but it may be cutting in and out. We're still with you though. head to Pensacola, Florida for our Make America Great Again rally. Have any of you watching ever seen Air Force One in person? If so, let us know. there he goes, the President of the United States heading to Pensacola, Florida for a Make America Great Again rally. Sorry about that, guys. My microphone wasn't on. Earlier today, President Trump was in a swearing-in for the new Homeland Security, Secretary of Homeland Security. So let's go to that.
Be there for a long while and working together, but this is a very special occasion because this is an issue I ran on. It's borders, it's Homeland Security, and it's one of the certainly important things. I can't ever say anything is the most important because our military is the most important and lots of other things, but this is right there. This is one of the very big issues. And I just want to congratulate you. Such an important day for our country. The numbers have been so incredible. We're up to 78%. If they used to have a 1% or a 2% number they used to celebrate, we're at 78%. And went down a little bit because actually a lot of people aren't trying to come in so much because they know it's not easy. But you're going to take it to new levels. We're going to get the wall. I know you want the wall. We're going to get the wall. If we don't get the wall, you're going to have a lot of very unhappy people, starting with me. We're going to get the wall. And we need it. We need it for the drug flow. We need it for people coming into our country. We want to have great people coming into our country. We want to have a merit-based system. We have to get rid of chain migration, all of these things we've been talking about. And in addition to the wall, we have to toughen up the borders even more. And we have to toughen up air travel too. It's not just walls, it's lots of people fly in and they come in through other means. But I have absolutely no doubt you are going to be so outstanding, and I'd like to congratulate you, and I wanted to be here for the big moment.
Thank you.
Darling.
Thank you, sir. Thank you. Thank you so
Very
much.
much. Congratulations.
Right.
We'll have the President. Why don't you turn around so they can see you? Okay. Place your left hand on the Bible, raise your right hand, and repeat after me. I, Kirsten Nielsen, do solemnly swear
I, Kirsten Nielsen, do solemnly swear
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
against all enemies, foreign and domestic,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same,
that I take this obligation freely
that I take this obligation freely
without any mental reservation
without any mental reservation
or purpose of evasion,
or purpose of evasion,
and that I will well and faithfully discharge
that I will well and faithfully discharge
the duties of the office
the duties of the office
upon which I'm about to enter.
upon which I'm about to enter.
So help me God.
So help me God.
All right, everyone, we are going to head over to the latest on the Lilac Fire press conference.
I don't know what the other numbers might be for Oceanside and the other places where they jumped, but I know that number is going to increase, probably double. But having toured the area, I would just tell you that I was very impressed with the Highway Patrol, the Sheriff's Department, and all the fire apparatus that was available to us. As North County Fire had mentioned, when this fire started, it was a half an acre. 20 minutes later, it was 500 acres. So if it's a wind-driven fire, you're not going to get in front of that. And right now, still, even though you don't see big clouds of smoke, we have a lot of hot spots that have to be put out today. I understand from the weathermen that Saturday and Sunday we're going to get increased winds, higher than we had yesterday. So we want to make sure all these hot spots are out. Somebody asked the question about residents going back in. We still have the roads blocked. We still have too many hot spots in there for them to go back in, and it's too dangerous. So I'll finish with this. I don't know who's next, but go for it. Sheriff. Which did a tremendous job, by the way.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Barnett. I'm the San Diego County Undersheriff. As you heard from Sheriff Gore this morning, we issued over 100,000 reverse 911 and Alert San Diego notifications telling people to evacuate. And I just want to reiterate again that when those evacuation notices are received, it's imperative that the residents get out as quickly as possible. Failing to do so not only puts themselves at risk, but also hampers the efforts of the fire service in moving their equipment around in these areas so they can put down the fire. We currently have about 150 law enforcement officers in North County working this fire directly. 90 plus of those are sheriff's deputies who were on scene in a matter of minutes, putting themselves at great risk to evacuate the residents of the Rancho Montserrat Mobile Home Park yesterday, as well as the surrounding neighboring communities. Right now, we have sheriff's deputies doing extensive patrols in the evacuated areas to ensure no crimes are committed. And we have, in cooperation with the California Highway Patrol, we're staffing roadblocks and making sure that those roads stay clear for the responding agencies. As always, San Diego County Law Enforcement works as a team, and as the county's mutual aid coordinator, we're ready to bring in additional resources both from in-county and out of county should the need arise. Thank you very much, and Chief Fennessy will address you next.
Good afternoon, Brian Fennessy. I'm the fire chief with the city of San Diego. You know, my jurisdiction was not impacted directly by the incident, but my department, my city, my organization, like so many others in the county, worked very hard to support the ongoing life-saving and property-protecting efforts up here in North County. My agency sent 4 strike teams, that's 20 engines, and we provided the 2 night flying helicopters that flew till 4 this morning. They dropped 146 loads of 375 gallons. But what I really want to share is, having been a firefighter for 40 years and having lived through, like many of you, some pretty devastating wildland fires here in San Diego County, I have never seen or witnessed such a cooperative effort. We're talking federal, state, local, talking in advance, days in advance, prepared for what eventually was to come. And we continue to be prepared. My department, like so many others, are still leaning forward. We've done all calls. Nobody's going home. We're not out of this yet. But I want to thank the state. I want to thank, CAL FIRE, certainly FEMA, the National Guard, everybody involved for keeping us well informed so we could keep our communities well informed and protected. The comments I'm getting from not only my elected officials but my community, my citizens, are mostly in thanks for all of us working together and cooperating in such a way that, quite frankly, is unprecedented. So thank you very much. We appreciate all the assistance.
Thank you, Chief. Good afternoon. My name is Mark Ghilarducci. I'm the Director of the Governor's Office of Emergency Services. And we've been coordinating the statewide effort of the response to all these fires, actually dating back to October the 8th when fires started breaking in Northern California. And it has unfortunately resulted in devastating results as the fire weather continued to progress and move. In the last several days, we've been very much focused on Southern California, from Santa Barbara all the way down here to San Diego. We coordinate this in an effort from a team approach of senior leaders at the state of California. And with me is the Adjutant General of the National Guard, General Baldwin, the Commissioner of the California Highway Patrol, Warren Stanley, and the Chief of CAL FIRE, Ken Pemlott. And in addition, the Regional Administrator from FEMA Region 9, Bob Fenton. Together we coordinate all activity that's happening in the state to ensure that there's enough support in advance in preparing and then responding to, and then if necessary, ultimately recovering from any kind of a major event. The last few days with the fire weather and the continued threat from fire weather, Santa Ana conditions, we're going to be remaining at a very high tempo, very much leaning forward to ensure that all assets that are needed are made available in an effective way. And let's talk about those assets a little bit. Early on in the series of fires that have been taking place from Santa Barbara south, including the Lilac fire yesterday, the governor proclaimed a state of emergency shortly after the initial notice of the fire taking place, opening up administrative channels and providing, ensuring to provide all resources of the state to support North County, San Diego County as necessary. Shortly after that, FEMA provided a federal
Fire Management Assistance Grant. That was a grant to be able to provide funding to ensure that all the resources that were necessary were made available. And FEMA has been a great partner in this as we move forward. That FMAG is in place and will help to offset much of the cost. In addition, the National Guard has deployed resources throughout the region, including helicopters for aerial firefighting, C-130 mobile air firefighting units out of Channel Islands that are working the various fires in Southern California, and over 1,000 guardsmen and women and airmen and women working and being able to be provided to local authorities as necessary, as well as some great technology that we utilize normally in a military setting, but we're using it in transfer to civilian authority, the MQ-9 Reaper, to be able to do fire perimeter mapping and get good damage assessment very rapidly. That team has been great and very supportive, and the Highway Patrol has been providing not just air assets and ground forces to support local law enforcement with road closures, evacuations, but throughout the region they are a force multiplier as necessary to move forward. In addition, we have coordinated over 500 mutual aid fire engines from jurisdictions throughout California, all the way from the Oregon-California border all the way down here to San Diego. And you may see strike teams from other parts of the state. That's neighbor helping neighbor, one team, one fight effort that we use in our mutual aid system. Fire service, law enforcement, emergency management, emergency medical, all coming together to ensure that all the jurisdictions' needs are met. And because we were very concerned, we were stretched pretty thin with resources throughout the state, we were very concerned with the fire weather, we reached out to our neighboring states. And we have resources here, firefighting engines, over 290 engines from Montana, Utah, New Mexico, Idaho, Arizona, Oregon, and Nevada. And some of those resources were actually here at the Lilac fire fighting fires. So we had firefighters and fire engines from other states on this fire supporting San Diego County. The coordination has been exceptional. The communication between federal, state, and local is exceptional, and we'll continue to work together as we move forward in the coming days until this fire weather pattern is over. Lastly, early this morning, the governor requested from the president and received what's called the Federal Emergency Declaration, and that's for direct federal assistance. That opens the door for us to be able to reach in to the federal agencies and use resources, either get technical assistance or actually get resources like helicopters or other kinds of resources over a long period of time, without any limitations of time, to be able to utilize and support local authorities. So in San Diego County, for example, there's a lot of military assets that gives us an opportunity to reach in and utilize those assets to the most effective way possible. But with that, let me turn it over to Chief Kemp Hemlock from CAL FIRE, who will talk about the fires in general and give you a more detailed orientation of the challenges we have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Again, Ken Pimlott, the Chief Director of CAL FIRE. And as Director Ghilarducci painted the picture, this has been a large effort across the region to engage in this weather event that, as we know, started really Sunday night and continues and will continue into next week. In addition to the Lilac fire, which again this morning is 4,100 acres and we're showing 0% containment, we're very hopeful. Firefighters are out on the fire lines right now and can make some great progress today. But I want to caution everybody that just because we're not seeing smoke in the air doesn't mean that we turn the corner on this fire. And so we're going to continue to work using all the resources at the disposal of the incident to continue to work on reducing that risk. So again, folks need to pay close attention throughout the day to what's going on there. But this has been a fire siege across multiple counties. There are 6 major fires or large fires that we have been responding to and working since Monday. The largest of those right now being the Thomas Fire in Ventura and now into Santa Barbara County. It's currently, this morning, 132,000 acres and 10% contained. And that continues to be a large effort both on the Los Padres National Forest but across both Ventura and Santa Barbara counties. So we continue to engage in that firefight. The Creek Fire in Los Angeles County is 15,323 acres and 40% contained. The Rye Fire in Los Angeles County is just over 6,000 acres and 35% contained. And then yesterday afternoon, in addition to the Lilac Fire when it broke out, we had a new fire in Riverside County, the Liberty Fire. And fortunately this morning it's 300 acres and 59% contained. So we've made good progress on several of these while we've had an opportunity where we've had the winds subsiding. And then the Skirball Fire in Los Angeles County near Brentwood, 475 acres and 30% contained. So our focus continues to be on these fires that are posing the greatest threats to life and property. We have over 8,700 firefighters on the fire lines as we speak this morning. Over 141,000 acres have burned in this fire siege since Monday. Ultimately, over 212,000 residents have been evacuated at some point. So we, as Director Ghilarducci indicated, continue to move resources and anticipate, additional wind events coming through the weekend. We will continue to monitor that and move resources and work very closely with all of our cooperating agencies and partners across the state. So with that, I believe. Come on up.
Well, actually, I would have preferred FEMA go first. Get up here. All right, sir. Now, the nature of California fires really does resemble other great disasters that are predictable but not predictable with specificity, whether it's the hurricanes that FEMA has been so involved in, natural flooding. Our fires happen. They happen at a time of the choosing that isn't 365 days spread out, but in fact all at once. And so the reason that it's important for the President's declaration and for FEMA's involvement is that we are stretching thin resources because they are being moved from city to city. But as you can see from the last briefing, it's very clear that California has put its resources out there, and now it's time for the federal government to backfill those to make sure that a next fire that breaks out isn't one without response. And so, I think our role is to deal with the size and scope cumulatively of all these fires. Obviously, there are tax considerations and direct grants that will be part of these declarations. My job, in a sense, is just to watch and make sure that the people that do this for a living and are trained every day are here to help. And with that, I'd like to cut short my speech and get the next briefing in. Thanks, Bob.
Well, let me finish things up. So as Mark said, we declared a fire management assistance grant, and we've declared 5 of them so far in the Southern California fires. It frees up resources, provides financial support to the costs being expended on these fires from the first responders, fire, police, medical. In addition to that, as said, the President very quickly approved this morning the request by the governor for additional federal resources. So we're coordinating those right now as we go through these windstorms. And if any federal resources are needed for this event, we will go ahead and provide them. In some cases, we're trying to pre-position stuff now and have done that through the week to make sure they're ready to respond quickly upon those requests. In addition to that, we will be working with the state and the local governments to do assessments to look at further programs that are available through the federal government to help with recovery long term, whether those be programs in FEMA or programs in other federal agencies such as SBA or others. So we'll be working hand in hand to do those assessments over time. Thank you.
Excuse me, can you talk specifically about what FEMA will do to help people who lost their homes?
Well, right now, people that have lost their homes should be going to their insurance companies and making claims for those. At this point, there has not been a major disaster declared for FEMA. We have to do those assessments first to determine what programs may be needed for the federal government, but there's a lot of programs that exist at the county level and state level that may be applicable right now to include assistance that Red Cross or other volunteer agencies may be able to provide. Right now, our focus has been to focus on the fire and getting the fire out and providing federal resources to help state and local resources in putting the fire out, whether those be from federal wildfire agencies such as U.S. Forest Service, BIA, Department of Interior, or Department of Defense, which has a number of resources in here. So that's our focus right now is to put the fires out, and then later we'll do assessments to determine whether programs may be available to individuals that are impacted from the storm. But I'd start with going to your insurance company and start to get assistance there.
And that's an active discussion on very much a bipartisan basis by the California delegation, is to try to make sure that in these cases fire is dealt, if you will, on a parity level with flood, because there can be a difference. We're trying to minimize that difference for uninsured losses related to fire coming right off of
Continued very sad situation out of California. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here on Fox News Now. You can believe when breaking news happens across the nation, across the world, you'll find it here. Appreciate it if you're watching on YouTube this afternoon. I am going to go to, possibly the biggest story in politics this week. All these sexual misconduct accusations, these resignations, plans to resign. So let's go to the latest.
Moore is hoping for a Trump bump from the president. President Trump remains popular in Alabama, and he is going all in for Moore across state lines. President Trump re-emphasized his support for Roy Moore on Twitter Friday, also attacking Moore's opponent, calling Democrat Doug Jones a Pelosi-Schumer puppet. Tonight's rally was not billed as a campaign event, rather a thank you to voters.
It's a reward to the people of Florida who got out there and used the shoe leather to put flyers in people's mailboxes.
Moore allegedly pursued relationships with several teenage girls 40 years ago when he was in his 30s. Today, Beverly Young Nelson, one of Moore's accusers, admitted that she added notes to the inscription he made in her high school yearbook. But her lawyer says the rest of the note was written by the Senate candidate.
The expert says that the inscription at the top, through his signature, that was Roy Moore.
I stand by my previous statement that Roy Moore sexually assaulted me.
The Moore campaign responded within just a few hours.
The truth is out there, and until she releases the yearbook, all we know is they're not telling the truth and they've lied.
When the allegations against Moore broke a month ago, the Republican National Committee cut off financial support. But RNC officials tell Fox News they transferred $170,000 in support of Moore that will go to phone calls, mailing, and get out the vote efforts in the final days of the campaign. Opponents are hitting back hard with new attack ads.
He called it dating. We call it unacceptable. That's why we can't support Roy Moore.
The latest Real Clear Politics average of polls has Moore ahead by 2 points. The election is just 4 days away. In Washington, Caroline Shively, Fox News.
All right, everyone. Hope you're doing well this Friday afternoon. I actually just moved to Phoenix from San Antonio. I lived there for 2.5 years, and I want to show you a shot out of somewhere in Texas right now. I'm not positive exactly where this is, but this is what a lot of the South saw today. Look at all that snow. It certainly puts you in the Christmas spirit. Makes me want some hot chocolate, I can tell you that much. What is your favorite winter pastime? What do you like to do? Do you like to cozy up next to the fire? Do you like to go Christmas caroling? Just take a look at this beautiful shot for a minute or two. Let it kind of soak in. Okay, everybody, we got the video for you that we were trying to get for you, so let's head that way.
dealing with $1 trillion F-35 program that continues to operate in dysfunction. The Air Force still subsidizes ULA for space launch with cost plus. Plus fixed fee contracts. The Army has sunk nearly $6.5 billion into WIN-T, a network that doesn't work, and the Navy's LCS program is delayed. The costs are now $6 billion and rising, and many of the key capabilities remain unproven. That's why this committee enacted the most sweeping acquisition reforms in a generation through the last two National Defense Authorization Act. And yet, despite that legislation, and in the face of our eroding military advantage, the department has been unable or unwilling to change. While the previous administration offered some rhetoric about reform, this committee was disappointed that we saw no meaningful action. Though I remain deeply concerned about the state of our acquisition system, I'm encouraged by the early signs from your team. It appears that you are beginning to make progress. Let me remind you of our expectations. First, the Office of the Secretary of Defense needs to let the services manage their programs. Congress has returned significant authority to the services, but we will be watching closely to make sure that you do business differently and use that authority wisely. Second, while we have empowered the services, that doesn't mean you can go and do whatever you like. The services must let OSD set strategy and policy and do real oversight. That means being transparent, providing data to and following the guidance set by OSD. Again, we will be watching. This committee takes its own oversight role seriously, and we will rely on you to keep us informed so that we can do our job. Third, the system must move faster. Time is of the essence. The work of groups like DIUX, the Strategic Capabilities Office, and the Rapid Capabilities Offices should become standard practice, not workarounds to the regular system. And we need these innovations for major defense acquisition programs, not just science and technology efforts. Fourth, you need to be willing to take more risk and be willing to fail when you try new things. We recognize that Congress can make that difficult. Keep us informed of your plans so that we can work together so that we're not surprised when things don't go exactly as planned. We would rather have a small failure that teaches us something early in the acquisition process than deal with a multi-billion-dollar program that becomes, quote, too big to fail. Fifth, invest in the acquisition workforce and empower them to succeed. Too often we hear that acquisition personnel are unfamiliar with or nervous about new authorities. And finally, reform your organizations and business practices to simplify and move faster. The major changes we have instituted through legislation are intended to give you the opportunity to make more detailed changes in your organizations. This is an opportunity to update your organizational structures. I would much rather you try and fail than do nothing, okay? And if you keep in contact with us and tell us what you're trying to do and what you're doing, we will be patient for about 5 minutes. And finally, reform your organizations and businesses practices to simplify and move faster. The major changes we have instituted through legislation are intended to give you the opportunity to make more detailed changes in your organizations. This is an opportunity to fail, This is an opportunity to update your organizational structures and internal processes accordingly. Now, if you have reforms and you want to try them, come and see us. Come and talk to us, and we'll be glad to cooperate with you. And don't be afraid to fail, because the only way that we will succeed is to take the risk of failure. Congress has provided you with all the tools you require. We expect you, as part of a new administration, to use these tools, unlike your predecessors. As you do so, you will have a willing partner in this committee. Do not hesitate to pick up the phone or come over and see any members of this committee. We have given our subcommittee chairs a great deal of latitude and a great deal of authority as we go through the decision-making process. Do not hesitate to call any of them, with the exception of Senator Reid.
That's right.
Finally, I believe, and we will be glad to hear your requirements and how we can help you do your business better in a more efficient fashion. We expect you, as part of the new administration, as I said, you'll have a willing partner in this committee. Look, we had we had a briefing from the RAND study that I think my friend Jack Reed would agree was one of the more disturbing briefings that we have had in the years that I've been a member of this committee. The gap is closing. There's no doubt about it. So we'll be expecting a lot of you, but we're not going to succeed unless we have a partnership here, okay? Thank you, Jack.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for holding this very important hearing, as you pointed out in your opening remarks. I want to thank the witnesses also for appearing here today. We look forward to your testimony. We have a shared goal to ensure that our military forces are equipped with the best systems and technologies that the Department of Defense builds and buys, and that those systems are the most effective and efficient ways possible to protect the nation and protect particularly the men and women in our armed forces. We also have a shared goal that the Pentagon should be able to access the most innovative people and technologies available from the best small companies, defense industry, labs, and universities. Also, we owe it to the taxpayers to ensure that we are buying things at reasonable prices and within reasonable budgets. This hearing will give us a chance to learn how the Department is also working to make those shared goals a reality. In my view, the services should play a very important role in the research and acquisition programs that provide advanced systems and capabilities to our combatant commanders. Under Chairman McCain's leadership, Congress has strengthened the service's role in the planning, requirements, and program review processes that strongly shape whether our acquisition programs succeed or fail. These new responsibilities are in addition to the role the services have always played in the development of their plans and budgets, ensuring that programs are appropriately prioritized and funded, especially in difficult budgetary environments. Finally, the services play a critical part in nurturing the careers of the military and civilian personnel who work in acquisition requirements and budget fields. Too often, we forget about those individuals and the necessity to maintain, enhance, and prolong their effective careers within the Department of Defense. Building on the successes of the Weapons Systems Acquisition Reform Act and the Pentagon's Better Buying Power initiatives, and making use particularly of the new reforms in the recent National Defense Authorization Acts, again led by Chairman McCain, we are seeing some improvements in acquisition processes and outcomes today and are well positioned to make more improvements, but we must do much, much, much better. And that's why you're here today. I look forward to seeing how the services plan to use their authorities and live up to their responsibilities to support successful acquisition efforts. I also welcome a discussion of further changes that can be made to strengthen their role as appropriate, with the hopes of continuing to improve acquisition outcomes and provide the best value and the best military capability for the nation. Thanks again to the witnesses and the chairman, and I look forward to the testimony. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I would like to say how much I appreciate the partnership that I have with Senator Reid, despite his educational lacking. But we are partners, and the fact that the defense bill was passed through this committee without a single dissenting vote, I think is ample testimony to the bipartisanship that characterizes our conduct of this committee, and I'm very proud to have Senator Reid as a partner. So we'll begin with the Honorable Ellen Lord, Undersecretary of Defense for Acquisition, Technology, and Logistics. Secretary Lord.
Chairman McCain, Ranking Member Reid.
By the way, could I just mention one thing? We may have, depending on what happens here, there's going to be an event at 11:45 on the floor of the Senate, and we may have to recess until that event is completed. Go ahead, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you for the opportunity to testify today on defense acquisition and reform efforts. I'm pleased to be joined by Secretary Esper, Secretary Wilson, and Assistant Secretary Gertz. After having spent 33 years in industry, I've come to my current position during a unique period in time, one which provides a great opportunity to make a positive change. First, the National Defense Authorization Acts for fiscal years 2016 and 17 have provided the direction and the tools for the Department to advance the capabilities required to restore our overmatch, speed the rate at which we field these advanced capabilities, and improve the overall affordability of our fighting forces' weapon systems. Secondly, Secretary Mattis has placed a priority on implementing these provisions alongside other department-wide reforms and practices required to improve the lethality and the readiness of our military. Using an industry analogy, I believe that the OSD should function as a corporate office, very lean, enabling the services as businesses to execute programs they're responsible for. AT&L should be pushing the majority of the department's work back to the surfaces and focusing on prototyping and experimentation, developing architectures and standards, interpreting law into policy and procedures, and simplifying acquisition processes to quickly and cost-effectively provide material and services to the warfighter. Stating it plainly, AT&L needs to be the strategic body, with focus across the board, driving affordability and accountability, reducing timelines, and equipping the services to execute their programs. Given the fact that the DoD average awards daily 1,800 contracts and 36,000 delivery and task orders, every process improvement we make has the potential to produce significant results. Having reviewed data measuring the typical lead time following validation of a warfighter requirement until the award of the resulting major weapons systems contract, I have concluded that we have the ability to reduce this procurement lead time by as much as 50%. Some of the ways in which we plan to do this are incentivizing contractors to submit responsive proposals in 60 days or less, and implementing electronic department-wide acquisition streamlining tools. Furthermore, Congress gave us the ability to conduct 10 pilot programs, permitting the reduction of cost and pricing data for foreign military sales. Key to our success would be to have the same flexibility for our U.S. procurements. If we were granted the statutory authority on sole source procurements, it would allow us to use our judgment to reduce the cost and pricing data we would require when we have cost transparency with the companies with which we do business. In my testimony, I stated that we have initiated 6 pilot programs that push the limits of our contracting agility. This is in order to demonstrate our ability to responsibly reduce this procurement lead time.
Tell us a couple of those programs.
C-130J retrofit kits, and the Japanese Global Hawk, so one U.S., one foreign military sales. Our goal is to get these pilot procurements done within 210 days from the issuance of the request for proposal. We would also
210 days.
210 days is the interim goal. We would like eventually to get to 180 days. We have the process to work down. We're going to work with you and your teams to demonstrate how we do it. And we're going to come back to you as we need additional authorities if needed. But we believe it's really interpreting the authorities we have now, making sure you agree with them, and having us move forward. So we're also pre-positioning production contracts to include options for yet-to-be-developed FMS requirements. In other words, in the initial contracts, we have the language so we can almost fill in the blank for FMS sales. Again, pre-thinking this is going to reduce the timeline and allow us to be very, very responsive to international customers.
So you don't need a 100-page RFP for a pistol.
Absolutely correct. On the Joint Strike Fighter program, we are determined to reduce the cost of production and sustainment. We have initiated an extensive JSF cost deep dive led jointly by my office, ATL, and CAPE. The purpose of this cost review is to understand in detail at Lockheed Martin, Northrop Grumman, Rolls-Royce, and BAE, as well as their primary subcontractors, and there are 100 of them in total, what JSF costs, why it costs what it costs, and most importantly, what we can do to improve cost performance at the prime contractor and up and down the supply chain. This will be a completely transparent process with the companies involved. The knowledge gained will inform.
All right, everyone, thanks so much for joining us on this Friday afternoon. My name is Pilar Arias. I am the newest member of the Fox News Now team, and this is my first time flying solo live. So please bear with me while you see me do the technical duties here and everything else that's required. We are going to wrap up this afternoon with the news of the Chicago Public Schools CEO resigning.
And has apologized publicly and to the board. We also recognize that stability and certainty is crucial to this important transition. The mayor has recommended the appointment of Dr. Janice Jackson as the acting CEO. We will vote on that appointment at next month's board meeting. And with that, I'll turn the podium over to the mayor of the city of Chicago.
That was a two-step there, Frank. Good afternoon, Frank. Thank you. And I want to thank Frank Clark and the board for their leadership. I also want to thank all the principals that are here, the religious leaders and community leaders that have also joined us on a Friday afternoon. Now, I've known Forrest for 30-plus years, the whole time in my life of public life and public service. And I want to thank Forrest for his exemplary service to the city of Chicago and the residents of the city of Chicago. Wherever he has worked, he's left an incredible and indelible mark on every endeavor. And like Frank said, he has been selfless in those endeavors, whether it was as a Cook County Commissioner, head of the Park District, the CTA, or the CPS. Forrest has been selfless, and in every entity, every effort, or every entity, every public institution, whether elected or appointed, that the people it serves have been better off the day after Forrest's work because of the work he has done from the first day he walked in. The systems are better, the customers are better, whether they're students or commuters like myself of the CTA. The CTA today for the city of Chicago is the envy of the United States. It's because of his work. He used to run down to Springfield screaming about doomsday scenarios financially and every other way. We used to steal money out of capital to pay operating expenses. It is not only financially stronger, and as somebody who relies on it, as I said, it has a 96% on-time service with over 90% of the people having a very good feeling about it in comparison to New York, which is 65% on time. But that's just one entity. We're here at CPS, where I asked Forrest to make sure, as I asked him to be the CEO, that it would be financially stronger and educationally excellent. This week, we got a reminder of the work of Forrest Claypool. Professor Reardon from Stanford University produced a report much echoing what the UIC report said just 6 months ago, that unlike any other public school system in the United States, this Chicago Public Schools today, our kids get 6 years of educational learning in just 5 years. Of the top 100 in the sense of population, it leads the country. It happens to be on the anniversary 30 years ago when Secretary William Bennett called the Chicago Public School System the worst in the United States. Today we have a report from Stanford University, just like the UIC report, noting all the progress that the principals, teachers, community leaders, parents, most importantly the students have made in making sure that Chicago Public Schools do their job, which is to educate our kids and prepare them for the future. And Forrest was selfless, not only on the educational front, but also in the ability to literally make sure that the finances never got near the classroom door. The system is more stable today because he threw himself in front of a governor who is trying to undermine both of those endeavors. And in every time I've known him, he has been selfless, and more than just selfless, he has been courageous to take on institutional inertia and make the entity, whether it was the Park District, the CTA, or CPS, better, and remembering who we serve and for what reason we serve them. Now, I also can say this about Forrest, and I know this about public life because I've been in public life myself since our first campaign together when we both decided we were younger, less gray, and a lot more full head of hair. And I want to say something. An individual in their time is judged by the entirety of their service. Their judgment about their work and their life's work, which is public services and Forrest's life, they are judged by the entirety of their service. And so when you look at Forrest's service, elected twice as Cook County Commissioner, CEO to Park District to clean that up, CTA to clean that up, and CPS to straighten it out and put it on stable, solid ground. He has always gone to work with his sleeves rolled up, ready to get the job done. And I can say he can walk out with his head high because he did a job well. And he will always be my friend. He did a great job for the children of the city of Chicago. And whoever, and that ever, is Janice Jackson, who will be the acting CEO, who has an incredible record herself, from Al Raby to Westinghouse to his head of education, will build off of the progress that Forrest selflessly has done. Now you're going to hear, I think, from a few community leaders to speak. They, too, wanted to be here to give their voice to a person who's made our city a better place, and we are better off as a city because he chose public service. So with that, I think Dr. Brazier.
Good afternoon. I'm Dr. Byron Brazier. I'm the pastor of the Apostolic Church of God. And I've known Forrest and have worked with him since the late 80s and when he was a staffer for Mayor Daley. And I must say that I've watched the staffer turned into a great statesman. And all the things that the mayor has said, we can all witness and we have watched, and we appreciate his service, and we're thankful for being able to work with him, in particular at Chicago Public Schools.
Thank you very much. My name is Leon Finney. I'm the pastor of the Metropolitan Apostolic Community Church and many, many other. So here's I have known Forrest for at least 2 decades. But more importantly, I have worked with every superintendent of public schools since 1968. And I have served as the former chairman of the Monitoring School Desegregation Committee that was imposed upon the city of Chicago because of racial discrimination against African American or blacks and Hispanics. Recently, I joined force in an effort along with the board to sue the state of Illinois as it related to the allocation of resources from the state coffers. And the issue was that black and brown and poor students were not getting a fair portion of the funds from the state of Illinois. No other head of this body ever had the nerve to sue the state of Illinois on the formula. But under Forrest Claypool's leadership, he did it. And so my sense is this: we owe Forrest a debt of gratitude for his courage and commitment, even to the moment he leaves, because it takes courage to admit your mistakes. It takes even more courage to be more concerned about the children of the state of Illinois and the city of Chicago than your own future. I commend and congratulate Forrest Claypool for work that he has done, not only in this instance, but other instances as a public servant. Thank you very much, Forrest.
My name is Pastor Leon Miller, pastor of Mount Ebenezer Baptist Church in Chicago, and Mr. Claypool at CTA have been doing great work and with the Chicago Public School. Thank God for his work. It's well done. When the crisis came, he got in the trenches and did marvelous work. And he even come out on Saturdays and met with the community and made sure that the kids would be able, assured us that the kids would be able to get the resources that they need. And we salute him today. And we are people that believe in forgiveness. And he already asked for that, and we believe that it's already done. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Lou Ramos. I'm the lead pastor of Storehouse Church, Logan Square, Humboldt Park, and now Portage Park. And as I just resonate with Forrest, we've been working together for almost 2 years. And the word that came to my heart is a leader for the children, a leader for the community. And how do you know he's a leader for the community? Because when we needed him, he would come out. He would come out to talk to leaders, communities, parents. So I just want to say thank you, Forrest. We fought some good battles. We end this year strong. I mean, the children of Chicago are fully funded, and I know the entire city celebrates that with you. So thank you, Forrest.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much. My turn? Yep. Thank you. First of all, let me thank all of these esteemed educational leaders, principals, civil rights leaders, religious leaders, and obviously Chairman Clark, members of the board, and Mayor Emanuel. Thank you so much for being here. It has been a pleasure working with you. When I took this job, I knew that it would be the toughest of my public career. It's lived up to that expectation, though perhaps in some unexpected ways. So, as I arrived nearly 3 years ago, CPS faced an unprecedented financial crisis. And that's saying a lot for a district that has been chronically underfunded by the state of Illinois. I'm proud to say that today we stand on much firmer financial ground. Difficult decisions and tough reforms were required to keep the doors open while we waited on justice from Springfield. And we did eventually win $450 million in new funding, in large part because of the leadership of people in this room. It was gratifying, as the mayor said, to have the New York Times this week declare that Chicago Public Schools are learning faster than almost any other school system in the country, according to data from Stanford University. Stanford is interested in learning more about how we have overcome inequity stemming from poverty and other systemic issues. This is progress achieved over many years by many people who have helped make this possible. And despite the dire financial circumstances, we have fought our way through these past several years. That academic progress has continued thanks to the outstanding work of our teachers and our principals, some of whom are here today. But there's irony in the timing of this report, because the inequities cited in the article are exactly the ones I was attacking, with all the passion I hold for this city and its families, when I made serious errors in judgment. I regret my actions, and I have apologized for them. Mr. Mayor, President Clark, Thank you for the opportunity to serve. Just as I accepted this assignment with my eyes wide open, I am experienced enough to know that I've accomplished all that I can accomplish here at CPS. So with great pride in...
Hey everyone, this is Pilar. Thank you so much for joining us on Fox News Now. If it's breaking, you can find it here. We have live feeds from across the country. We are always on fox10phoenix.com. We're on social media, Facebook, Twitter. It's the holiday season and lots of events are happening this weekend, so feel free to let us know what your plans are. Parts of the South and Southeast, even the Northeast, saw some snow overnight into today. Really appreciate you being with us, and we will return on Monday. So thank you very much and have a great evening and weekend. We'll take you back out to some snow, which I actually believe that I learned the shot that I showed you earlier was in New Jersey. So let's go there now.